Are you developing IoT solutions? Get ready for tomorrow with Farnell, supporting your design journey from connecting smart sensors to the cloud to implementing AI. Find everything you need at farnell.com. Enjoy this episode with Farnell, a global distributor of electronic products and solutions.
Hello and welcome to the AV Forums podcast for Monday the 25th of July. Thank you for joining us tonight. If you are watching live on YouTube, good evening to you. The chat window is open. Please leave your questions in there tonight and we shall get through them. I can see there's quite a few of you watching already, so get your questions in. Like I say, we will try and get through as many as possible. If we don't get through them all tonight, we will try and get through them on the thread in the podcast forum. So like I say, good evening. The Movies podcast is coming along at 8:30 tonight. So if it's movies you're interested in, the boys will be along, Tom and the team tonight. There is no Kaz this week, 8:30. On this channel, just refresh the main page for AV Forums and click on the Movies podcast at 8:30 to join the guys for that bit. Good evening to Ed Selley.
Good evening, Phil.
Julian Scott.
Good evening.
And Ian Collen.
Good evening.
The team are here. Just briefly introduce everybody again, just so you know who is who. So I'm Phil Hinton. I am the editor of the site. We also have our hi-fi specialist. That's Ed Selley. Ed does everything hi-fi, and he's done just about everything there is to do in the industry. And he's been writing a long time and knows his hi-fi stuff. Ian's our news reporter, news writer. He knows everything that's going in the world of AV and hi-fi news, or he should, because that's his job title. So Ian's been with the team a little while now, and he's also a games reviewer. So we'll find out what he's been up to very soon. And then, of course, we've got Jules. Jules is a professional calibrator, and not just a professional calibrator for consumer displays. Jules actually goes into the field and calibrates all the displays that many of the TV programs that you watch are mastered on and seen on and filmed on. He actually goes to the studios and calibrates the screens for the studios, as well as coming to your home if you hire him to calibrate your system. So that's the team tonight. Before we get into what we've been up to, just briefly what we are going to cover this evening. We've got current competitions coming up. We've also got news from Ian. We've got some AV news, some hi-fi news. I'm going to talk briefly about the Sony A95K QD-OLED TV. It's one that everybody's been waiting on since the Samsung was launched. So is it any good? I'll give you my first thoughts. This is not my review. This is just me having started the testing process and living with the TV for a little time. I'll give you some feedback on what I've found so far, but it won't be the definitive review. Ed's going to talk about hi-fi in 2022. Hi-fi has changed a lot in the last decade. We're going to get into that a little bit tonight and ask the question, can you build a very high-end hi-fi system for under $1,000? Or do you need to make compromises? We're going to discuss all of that, as well as Jules is going to go through CMS, that's Color Management System Calibration. What is it? What does it do? You'll have seen it mentioned in the reviews many times. You may be not quite sure what it actually means. We're going to quickly go over that this evening as well and explain all of that. We'll also have Ed's album, vinyl and playlist for this week. And then we'll tell you what we've been watching on the TV and what we recommend. So that's all coming up this evening. But first, Jules, what have you been up to since the last podcast?
Well, I have been, what did I do? I watched my daughter get graduated. Is that a word? A verb? Can you get graduated?
No, she graduated.
She graduated.
Yes.
Yeah. And she graduated at, for me, the best place in the world on the pitch at Carrow Road. So
nice.
Double excitement. I was pointing out to everybody where I scored the goals from and all that kind of stuff. So that was wonderful. And then we had a reunion with some old uni friends, first time in 30 plus years. They all came up here and we went back to Leicester University and wandered around. And it was wonderful, but also pretty depressing at the same time because everybody's so much older. And, perhaps the most depressing thing was going to the library. There's no books. It's just all computer labs. Okay. Everything, how can you have a library without books? But, it's all digitized now.
Yeah, I've been invited to one of these reunion things and I couldn't make it at the time. But then thinking about it afterwards, I was kind of, would it be worth going along to? Do you still have anything in common with these people that you spent time with at school and that kind of thing? And like you say, things have changed so much since we were at school. just in terms of how the buildings look and what they use in the classrooms and stuff. So interesting, Jules. I understand your team ventured north at the weekend to play my team in Edinburgh. What was the result?
Well, clearly Hibs are a mighty team, a mighty force up there in Scottish football, and we wimped home with our tails between our legs, and we're very worried now about Cardiff. So, aren't we, Ian?
That was our under-23s we played at the weekend.
Was it really? All right.
Yeah, definitely. Honest.
We did play the children.
I'm not worried at all.
Okay. Sunshine was on Leith that day.
But well done to Hibs.
Yes.
Yeah, big scalp for the Hibbies. I've got to say, it's a long time since I've watched the Hibs, and calling them a football team, that's probably a stretch these days. But anyway, it's maybe a stretch for Norwich as well. Who knows? Right. What have you been up to, Ian?
Gaming, unsurprisingly.
I didn't think you were going to say that.
Well, you did say earlier it was in my job description, so I'm kind of obliged to. It's one of the things where I can play games and consider it research.
Nice.
It's always good. But yeah, I mean, the main game I've been playing, I'll keep it brief because there's a review up on the site, is for a game called As Dusk Falls. It's more of an interactive kind of choose your own adventure type style than an actual video game. But like I say, it's all up on the website. But it's just a really good way of seeing how games can tell stories in ways that other kind of media might not be able to kind of immerse you in quite so much. So yeah, it's a really good game. It's currently free to play on Game Pass as well. So if you're a subscriber to that, it's well worth jumping on board. Reviews on the site. Other than that, couple of weird additions. I accidentally stumbled across the dog surfing championships of the weekend, as you do.
How far down the dial is that one then? I mean, does the channel start with a 9?
It's not Eurosport.
No, it's actually on my local beach. I just went out for a walk.
Outside. Yeah,
actually ventured out.
Just remind us, where do you live? Bournemouth. All right.
Yeah. So it's one of the beaches down there. It was just full of dogs and surfboards, which was quite a surreal sight to see. But yeah, it seemed like everybody involved was having good fun, so that was cool. And then I returned home, another game on Game Pass to recommend, but it's very niche, and I don't know why I spent so long playing it. It's a game that does exactly what it says on the tin, called Power Wash Simulator. Basically, you cook yourself with a power wash and you clean stuff. And it's one of those where if you like Farming Simulator in those games where you ask yourself, why the hell am I playing this? I've got enough chores to do on my 9 to 5. Why am I working for fun? But you start playing it and it's curiously addictive. So, I mean, I didn't think it'd be good enough to do a review for, or big enough to do a review for. But yeah, again, it's free on Game Pass. So it's definitely check it out, but approach with caution, because it's one of those where you're like, what am I going to do this for? Next thing you know, it's dark outside and you need to go.
I've actually been trying to set up a power washer over the weekend just to try and wash the cars.
Well, you don't need to. You just do it virtually.
Yeah. But does it clean the cars? Or that's the thing. Yeah. Ed, what have you been up to?
I've been doing a fair bit of work. I've bought another watch. Because it seemed like a good idea at the time. So obviously, if you look at AV Forums, does actually have a watch thread lurking in the general chat section, and it's mostly people posting smartwatches. Quite legitimately, they're watches that monitor their heart rate, tell them how far they've gone, and do all sorts of blisteringly clever things. So I've gone and bought one which does let's get these functions right. It does hours, minutes, and seconds, and that's it. And it needs to be hand wound, which needs to be done every 40 hours or it stops working. So it blended in perfectly into the smartwatch thread. So that was good. Otherwise, I've been doing lots of work for you and other people. And today, as well as reboxing an enormous amount of stuff, I reboxed 2 pairs of speakers, pair of speaker stands, 4 amplifiers, a turntable, a phono stage, and 2 wireless speakers, all of which were unboxed because I was lazy. I couldn't stand to do it in 30+ degree heat. And then I celebrated by doing that by falling over and hitting my head. So I was explaining to Phil before we went live, if I suddenly start sounding very peculiar, it's because of that. But I feel all right at the moment. So
okay. I think that's going to be a hard one to
Oh no, that's fair. And just before anyone flags it up and go, why are you drinking beer? After doing that, the beer contains no alcohol. I need to be very clear about this. I am cavalier about my health, but not quite that deranged. So rest assured, I am not consuming alcohol on top of this. So there we go.
Reminds me of Faulty Towers. John Cleese hits his head, and you end up with a German sketch.
Exactly. I would need a larger, more ornate bandage around my head to really carry that off. But no, I think I'm fine. So we continue from there. But that's what I've been up to.
Okay. Terrible username says we need to do power wash reviews. Okay, we'll look into it. We'll see. Obviously, snow foam is probably better.
I mean, we do have a farming simulator thread. I think I've seen it in the past.
Okay. Yeah. Okay.
I mean, people take it very seriously.
Yeah.
And it's really hard.
It is a bit worrying. Maybe people should go on holiday. That's what I did last weekend. I went
just
on
Fox
holiday.
Clarkson's farm.
Well, yeah, I'd agree with that. Great. So yeah, I spent last weekend on holiday. I just want to give a shout out to the place that we stayed because it's a new business. They opened during lockdown, and they were absolutely fantastic hosts. So it's Hawthorne Hideaway. They're south of Doncaster. Look them up online. It's adults only, 2 lodges and a narrowboat. So no kids, no pets. Just a nice, relaxing place. There's a sauna. There's a massage offered, so you can do all that kind of thing. There's barbecue pits, and you basically get your own lodge, your own hot tub, your own day bed, and basically while the time away. And obviously we picked a great weekend. It was fantastic weather. Next to a canal, so obviously stunning scenery, nice walks, all the rest of it, loads of wildlife. Saw a kingfisher, which is very rare to see, and just had a really relaxing time. I didn't look at the laptop, which for me is incredibly rare, because even when I go, or I've been on holiday in the past, I've always looked at the laptop first thing in the morning, last thing at night. It didn't get opened. Didn't look at it. So
can't say better than that.
So yeah, nice relaxing time. And like I say, the hosts were absolutely superb. 5 out of 5 from me. So check them out if that's your kind of thing for a holiday. Right, so that's everything we've been up to. We've got lots to get through tonight, so let's get on with the show.
If you'd like to support the AV Forums podcast on a regular basis, then why not become a patron? Head over to patreon.com/AV Forums to sign up. You can also make a one-off donation through the Super Chat or via streamlabs.com/AV Forums. All donations help us to improve the website and the podcasts. Thank you to all our supporters.
Hello to our new patrons, Rob Troth and Mike Trill. Thank you very much, guys, for your support. It's great to have you on board as patrons. If you're interested in supporting us, in helping us produce more podcasts and so on, then why not sign up as a patron? You can do that through patreon.com/AV Forums, as was just said in the ident. So welcome, guys, and thank you very much for your support. It really is appreciated. So we're going to go to Ian. Current competitions.
Okay. Yeah, by the looks of things, there are 4 ongoing from us at the moment. First of all, you can win £1,000 worth of prizes courtesy of MPB. I'm presuming that would include an awful lot of very good photo equipment if you are one of the lucky winners. You can also win a 2 terabyte Humax Aura 4K Freeview Play recorder and a Humax Wi-Fi smart plug bundle. Sounds pretty good to me. We also have, you can win one of 3 £100 gift cards to spend at brawn-audio.com. I assume the clue is very much in the name of what you're going to be buying there. And finally, you can win a Triangle Alara LN018 and a turntable hi-fi system worth £799, courtesy of SCV. If you fancy any of those, just head over to avforums.com/competitions to enter. All competitions are open to eligible AV Forums members who are resident in the UK.
Thank you very much for that, Ian. Lots of good prizes there. Get yourselves over, see what you can win. And we do have people watching this evening live on YouTube from quite far afield, El Paso in Texas. Julia, good evening to you. Unfortunately, you can't enter the competitions, but it's great to see you here. And you asked the question about 77-inch or larger screens for the A95K next year. We don't know. It's Samsung Display who make those panels. At the moment, it's 55 and 65-inch only. So your only option at this moment in time is 77-inch from LG. So their G2 would be the equivalent to an A95K. So yeah, you'd have to just wait and see what's announced at CES, which is coming up in January, and that's normally where we get to know all the big news for the year ahead. But this year only, it's 55 and 65 inches. Before we get stuck into the podcast this evening, I just want to put out there that we are taking on your feedback at the moment in terms of format and so on with the podcast. What is it you like? What would you like to see more of? We're having some discussions about maybe splitting the audio and video out into separate podcasts, or just adding a few tweaks here and there. What is it that you enjoy? What is it that makes you come along and watch us live on a Monday evening, or maybe tune in a little bit later in the week? Which podcast providers do you use? What features do you like? What you don't like? If you can give us your feedback, please head over to avforums.com and find the feedback thread, which is usually right at the bottom of the forums. Just above the forum feedback, you'll find AV Forums podcast. Click on that and click on this podcast edition, and then add your thoughts in the thread there. And if you're not a member of AV Forums, it is free to join and sign up to do that. So please do that. Please give us your feedback, because we are taking all the feedback on at the moment and looking at ways we can streamline the podcast, make it a little bit better, give you more of what you're actually looking for when it comes to podcasts. Do you want to ask us questions more? Do you want more in-depth reviews? Do you want, what is it that you want? Let us know in the feedback, and we'll certainly look at that and see what we can do going forward. So going forward, let's head over to Ian for the news. So not a lot of AV news around, but no surprise that Netflix is losing subscribers, Ian.
Yes, yeah, its latest financials came through. As we reported a few months back when the Q1 report came through, they lost 200,000 subscribers then. And now in the latest financial reports, as you say, they've lost another 1 million subscribers. To be fair, back in Q1, they predicted to lose 2 million subscribers, but obviously the success, the likes of Stranger Things, has managed to keep a few people hanging around. And in fairness, again, they've still got 220 million subscribers, and in the last financial quarter, they still posted an increase in revenue of $7.97 billion. So it's not exactly all gloom and doom. And just a couple of added caveats to that as well. In the same report, the company announced that the cheaper ads-supported tier that we've been talking about in the past is due to arrive early in 2023, but still no word on pricing. And they also referenced the paid sharing system, which aims to clamp down on people sharing passwords around various households without paying for it. This involves just paying a small extra subscription fee per household, so you can link households to one account. And that's going to start rolling out on more of a global scale in 2023 as well. So yeah, a few losses from Netflix, but a few pointers as to what's happening in the future as well.
Something that's just worth adding. Someone pointed this out on Twitter earlier. And I think it bears repeating that this subscriber loss, it does include Netflix pulling out of Russia. So that's, I think there's a world of difference between people cancelling their subscriptions and you ethically removing yourself from a market. So in terms of Ian's comments are valid here, in particular, that it's not as bad as people expected, especially as baked into those numbers was the loss of a complete market. So
and the COVID bump as well, which saw a lot of people sign
up absolutely
during lockdown and then no longer need it. So it was expected.
I don't want to pretend that it's smooth sailing for Netflix. They still have some serious structural issues to overcome, and the balkanization of the streaming service market is going to be a huge problem for everyone who isn't Apple, Amazon, and Disney, who, let's face it, have unlimited resources. Nevertheless, Netflix isn't well, I've gone on record in the past, and I feel that Spotify's future is particularly bleak. I don't feel that Netflix is in the same category yet. So it'll be interesting to see how this one goes. But yeah, it's worth pointing out that the drop in subscriber numbers includes removing themselves from a complete country.
Yeah. And, 1 million sounds big, but it's not that big when you look at the bigger picture, pun intended. It's it's a drop in the ocean for a company the size of Netflix with their subscriber base. And they produced their first half-decent film this week. So
it's dividing opinions. I keep intending to watch it and being sidetracked by episodes of Brooklyn Nine-Nine. I haven't seen it yet. So
I don't think Netflix are going anywhere just yet. I do think some of the policies that they're trying to bring in, especially account sharing, may backfire on them slightly. Because I think that's one way that they tend to grow. people latch on to somebody else's account and then they think, oh, actually, this is not too bad, and end up getting it themselves. So that could backfire on them a little bit if they start trying to clamp down on that kind of thing. Right, what else was there AV-wise, news-wise?
Well, yeah, just another little bit of business news involving LG this time. And it's webOS software, which it began showing around with various partners last year. Had about 20 people signed up back then, but now it's aiming to up that to 200 brand partners using its webOS platform. It's kind of seen as a move to maybe set itself up as a software company as much as a hardware company, simply because it sees its long-term prospects maybe not so much just in selling TVs and its other devices. They're looking at sort of maybe the likes of Apple, obviously selling its own iOS service as well as its iPads and iPhones, and it's thinking to itself, hey, if we could maybe reflect that in the TV market, there could be a lot of money to be made.
Yeah.
So I mean, you guys might know more about the validity.
It was something that was pointed out to me a long time ago when smart TV was in its infancy. Was these companies are great at building the products, but when it comes to software that actually runs and works without being buggy and so on, and you see it right across the industry. It's not just TVs. You see it hi-fi and AVRs and all sorts.
Yeah,
where
all the time.
software is usually the point at which those products fall down. LG were very, very clever because they bought webOS a long time ago, and they've developed it from the ground up to do what they want it to do. And I have to say, it's a little bit long in the tooth, but it works, and it has worked, and it continues to work. So why change it? It's one of these systems that it goes through a refresh or a facelift now and again, but the core of it is the same as it was when it was first launched. It's just a little bit slicker, a little bit quicker, and so on. And the processors have gotten a lot faster now. So it's a good, stable platform. They were very clever to get in there nice and early when it came to smart TV. So, I think this is just a progression on their part. And they've looked at other areas of the industry as well. So in terms of the audio side of things, and the same with Samsung, they've looked at the different market areas that they're involved in and get the expertise in nice and early with these products, so they can offer all-round stuff. Because Ed will bring this up as well, but you look at some of the products from smaller companies that don't quite have the same clout as the likes of these big corporations like LG and so on, trying to introduce their own software to products, and it can be an absolute minefield.
Yes, and we've seen Blue OS. So similar name, but the Lembrook developed platform for NAD and Blue Sound is now being offered to other companies. So Roxanne took the plunge with Monitor Audio. Cyrus is taking the plunge. Yes, if you're a small company, you can either go through a world of hurt trying to get your own platform up and running, and realistically, it is too late to do that, or you can buy in somebody else's platform. And I think I quite agree that the same applies to televisions as well. But I mean, as you say, webOS, it maybe could do with a quick nip and tuck here and there, but the fundamentals are still extremely sound, and it's just pleasant to use in a way that so many of these systems are not.
Yeah, I'd agree with that. It really works. It's sort of almost like the old Wii was. You can pick it up, you can point, you can click, and even my old 80-year-old dad, within 10 minutes, was whizzing away on my old B8, which I gave him when I upgraded, and 10 minutes, and he's on YouTube and he's on everything. So they really, it's a very good operating system.
Yeah, it's very intuitive. Right, we're going to move on quickly. Hi-Fi news. So this again falls under the AV banner a little bit as well. So Aura 3D, we reported a couple of weeks ago that the company was in financial trouble and was looking for a buyer. And Ian, they have found that buyer.
Yes, indeed they have. An independent investment company called Suppleberg Investments has bought up all of the assets, not only with a view to obviously continuing to sell the product, but also apparently with a commitment to develop it for the future as well. There's a new holding company in place called New Oro BV, which is running the day-to-day management. So they've kept all the development team, all the sound specialists, basically all the experts are still being kept in-house. And the report also suggests that there's other major brands now looking to get involved, both in terms of the Aura 3D technology and also the content that uses it. So, short term, it looks like Aura 3D could have a healthy future after all.
Well, that's good, because one of the things that I do like about Aura 3D is their up mixer. it's one of the best on the market when it comes to that kind of thing. So I'm glad that that's been saved. As for content, again, it's just trying to get content partners on board, and it's difficult when you're fighting for market space with Dolby, who have massive resources and massive market penetration. But best of luck to them. It's a great system. It sounds fantastic. Like I say, they just need to get the content out there. They're starting to get the hardware out there.
They'd be better off looking at the games market.
Yeah, I think that's a good shout, Ed. I really do think that's a good shout. So it'll be interesting to see what they actually do with it now. But their future for now is secure, so that's good news. And then finally, Ed.
Yes, I mean, obviously a bit more prosaic. This isn't smart at all, but fresh from me awarding a perfect score to the Exposure 3510 integrated. For you, those of you thinking, I don't like that. I want a more purist solution. I want pre and power. Good news, the 3510 pre-power has now launched. This really is a meat and two veg adaptation of the 3510. It doesn't I don't believe it changes the feature set at all. All it does is do the classic premise of splitting off the sensitive circuitry of the preamplifier from the burly high voltage section in the power amplifier, puts them in separate chassis and gives them separate power supplies rather than taking a tap off for the preamp. Where this might be of interest is if you are an active speaker user, and I mean that in the classic sense of the active speakers where you do still need a separate preamp. I have every suspicion this will be a monumentally good preamplifier at a fairly sensible price, and would be just the sort of thing if you're an ATC owner or something like that. If there's interest in it, I will, of course, throw my hat into the ring and volunteer to review them. But I haven't done a pre-power for AVF, so I don't necessarily know if the interest is there. So make yourselves known if it's the sort of thing you want to see done.
Well, there's only one way to find out, isn't there? And that's let's give it a go, Ed.
All right, okay.
Let's see what's what, because hi-fi has changed a lot in the last decade. And if people have got questions tonight, do get them in on the top chat. If you are the live chat, if you're watching live on YouTube at the moment. If you're not, you can still ask questions. You can do that in the thread associated with this podcast on AV Forums. Just head over there and ask a question, and we'll pick it up and we'll answer the question the following podcast. But hi-fi has changed, Ed. It's changed a lot from when we first were interested in it. You know, a separate turntable and a separate tuner, and then you had your amplifier and your speakers and so on. And a lot of that still exists, but a lot of it has integrated into all-in-ones, and streaming is now a huge part of it. So where are we in 2022?
We are in the middle of things, ironically, pushing back slightly from an extreme position we were in going into in the before the pandemic kicked off. If you'd asked me this question in 2019, I mean, a great sound for £1,000. At that point, all-in-one systems, be they all-in-one systems that you added speakers to, or just complete systems with speakers on board, had pretty much all the answers, because conventional hi-fi separates were getting more expensive. Essentially they did more. They had a level of performance that separate units didn't really have much in the way of an answer to, and part of that was because they simply cost more to make because they had fairly substantial amounts of metalwork on them. Now, over the course of the last few weeks, I have been testing bits of equipment which are, if you like, redressing this balance. The first and most important thing that hi-fi equipment has been doing is it's been getting smaller. So rather than you paying for 430 mils of sheet steel, equipment is now very, very small. Case in point, I have already reviewed a number of the IFI Zen products for AV Forums. The reviews are up on the site. You can read them at your leisure. Those are already pretty competitively priced, but I have now got a complete box of the Zen Air units where effectively they are very, very similar to the Zen Mark IIs that I've reviewed some product for, but they've ditched the metal casework. They're in a sort of plastic nutcase, but they are under £100 a pop. And all of a sudden, where a couple of years ago I'd have said, if you've got £1,000, concentrate your resources, go all in one, you can still do that and they will still sound extremely good. It's not like that market's going backwards. There's still technical progression there. But separates have updated and evolved to be relevant again for £1,000. And if you look at things like the Rega System 1, which I reviewed, now that's £1,200, but that it does include a pair of speakers which are relatively expensive. I have a system from Project which is aimed squarely at the Rega System 1 here on test at the moment. Now again, that's £1,500, but that includes again a proportionally expensive turntable. Where the action is now is these smaller, more compact separate systems where they are effectively relying on your computer, your television, or your phone to be your access point to content, and they simply get on with decoding it and making noise. And they're extremely good at it. If you can stomach the fact that, you know, it will be a little selection of boxes. They have a sort of children's activity flavor to them, these systems, but more often than not, because if you go outside of one manufacturer, you end up with a medley of slightly different sized boxes. There are aesthetic issues, which I believe we may need to address as I review these products singly. But nevertheless, post-pandemic, if I wanted to assemble £1,000 system that did the things that I wanted it to do as well as it could be done, I'd be back looking at separates again. And astonishingly, it can still, if you are demented, include vinyl in that as well. I mean, my recommendation really remains, if you are thinking about getting into vinyl in 2022, don't. It's an extremely expensive and destructive habit. And, you know, it's predicated around you having an existing collection of them, because essentially buying a turntable for X £100 and then records at £25 a pop is poor maths. So you can choose vinyl, you can make that decision if you want, but if you are simply making use of, I mean, there's been questions in the thread this evening about Apple Music, and it's unfortunately, guys, I don't have an Apple TV, so I can't tell you off the top of my head about the behavior with Atmos, but I will certainly do my best to find out for you. But again, Apple TVs, even your phone, if you've got an iPhone or an iPad with Apple Music, it is a sensational platform. It sounds every bit as good as Qobuz, which is my favorite piece of streaming software, because it's very flexible and it's very clever. But if you're just using an iPhone or an iPad, just Apple Music is absolutely brilliant. So your budget can be condensed into a smaller number of units and they will do an outstanding job. And if you want something more aesthetically elegant, there's still plenty of mileage in the wireless speaker front. I mean, the Bose & Wilkins Zeppelin, which I reviewed a little while back, it's huge. The shape is not particularly space friendly in my considered opinion, but it's hard to argue with the fact that it sounds extremely good indeed. And since I've tested it, Bose & Wilkins has actually gone and significantly beefed up the streaming interface as well. So it's much, much better to use than it was. So you've got lots of options, but whereas 3 years ago, I'd have said something like the Zeppelin, go for that. That's the sensible way forward. Separates have managed to work out how to stay relevant, how to stay competitive. And I would now, if you don't mind it having more plugs and being a bit fiddlier to get going in the first place, the best level of performance your £1,000 could give you would be back with separates equipment.
It's interesting that we've come full circle on that one. If this is a subject you're interested in, do you want to know more about hi-fi this year? Is it something you're interested in? Do you want to buy it but you've only got £1,000 to spend? Let us know and we'll certainly deep dive into these subjects for you, and that can go for anything, not just hi-fi, anything where you want a bit of advice if you're putting systems together or whatever. Obviously we play with the kit all the time, and just
something that I'll throw in, because it's an editorial item, and Phil has been very even-handed on this and has generally let me just crack on. I have a constant conflict, for want of a better word. There are people that want me to do lots of affordable things. There are other people that want me to do fantasy football things. I try and strike a balance between both sets of components. It's important to stress that hi-fi is getting more expensive. All things are getting more expensive. I take it those of you that have been outside and bought anything in a shop will have noticed that. So there are preconceived ideas about how much certain things should cost, and those aren't necessarily accurate. I'm trying to balance things like the Zen Airs and the Project System with, there's another pair of Sonos Fabers going through. They are an absolutely bargain, £3,998. I'm trying to strike the balance and keep everybody happy. If you genuinely feel I have got it wrong, then make your feelings known. I have to say that in terms of the amount of affordable equipment on the market to test, we cannot solely function on affordable equipment. There has to be some stuff which is rather more significantly priced just for the basis of coverage. I was asked very quickly before I sign off on this. I was asked by Moadib, have I listened to the new Kef Tower wireless speakers, the LS60? I haven't. There is one review set of LS60s. I can only assume they're quite good because they aren't making their way through the reviewers very fast. Make of that what you will. But no, I have asked for them and the LSX2s. So I will, as soon as I have access to them, I will endeavour to provide you with review copy for both.
Yeah, excellent. Well, thank you very much, Ed. And like I say, if there are subjects you want to know, not necessarily hi-fi, but anything else that you want to know how to put a system together, how to set it up, what is the best way to use the equipment and so on, then get your questions in. The best way to do it is probably on the threads with the podcast. We do dip into those now and again. And if it's something that's been asked quite a bit, we will then progress that over to a podcast and maybe even dedicate a podcast subject to that. So give us your feedback. We're looking for your feedback. Give it to us and let us know exactly what you think. Right. So I know the vast majority of people probably watching live tonight have seen the Sony A95K plastered all over the description and so on, and want to know what the TV's like. And I'm going to start this very quickly by saying that this is not my review. I have had the TV a few weeks now. I am working my way through the usual tests, and these tests do take time. I'm not the type of reviewer that just opens a box, sets a product up in front of me, watches it for an hour, and then writes a review. That's not fair to the end user. It's not fair to you. And I'm an enthusiast at the end of the day. I want to know what the product's like, and I'm going to put it through as many tests as possible and use it as a TV, which, again, a lot of reviewers tend to forget that it's a TV. You're supposed to sit down and watch it. And with a lot of equipment, that can be the case. So we do try and be balanced. We use the TVs properly as a normal TV. We don't just sit and watch test patterns. I've seen that comment raised a few times. Yeah, you sit and watch test patterns, but what's it like with actual content? Well, we actually sit and watch actual content, so don't worry about that. But this is not my review. This is my first thoughts. And the thing that people are going to say straight away, and I've already seen the question asked by Christian in the chat tonight, do you go for the A95K or do you go for the cheaper Samsung S95B? That is going to be the main question that people are going to ask. What I will caveat my answer with is that there is no such thing as a perfect TV. You need to choose a TV that's going to suit you and what it is that you're looking for. Because these TVs, although they use the same technology, are really quite different in the way that they approach being a TV. And what I mean by that is that the main thing that's striking is the design difference between the Sony and the Samsung. The Samsung's a very traditional TV. It has a center stand. It raises the panel up quite a bit. You can get a sound bar in underneath. It's quite a nicely designed rectangle, but it is plastic. The build quality is not perfect. But once you've got it set up on your stand, you're probably not going to notice the build quality in any way. And like I say, it approaches being a TV the traditional way, with the stand, with the raised panel and so on. Whereas the Sony is much, almost a completely different approach to a TV. It's a monolithic block that sits flat to your surface if you are mounting it on a surface. The stand disappears. It's behind the TV. And the TV has a lean back because of that. And it's very much Sony's design language from a number of years ago, where they've gone for that monolithic design. It's a beautiful looking TV, but of course, when you got a TV like that, it's very difficult to put a soundbar underneath, for example. Now, Sony do approach things differently from other manufacturers. They use the screen as the speaker. They have, the woofer built in behind, and then they also have the transducer at the top, which vibrates the screen and gives you the high frequencies and turns the screen into a speaker, which is a great approach. It's a fantastic approach. It's won many of our Editor's Choice Awards year on year because it's a very unique way of approaching it. And again, one of the things that makes sound and vision work is the sound actually coming from where that object is on the screen, and having the screen as the speaker. Sony absolutely nails that approach. Now, of course, it's never going to perform as a high quality center speaker, although you can wire it into your system as a center speaker. And it's one of these things that I've always wondered why Sony don't actually create speakers that can go left and right and surround speakers that are tonally matched to the TV. It seems like it's one of these no-brainer things that they should have come up with a number of years ago to create a surround system that works with their acoustic panel technology, but we're still waiting on that system coming along. So in terms of TVs, they're two completely different approaches in terms of the design. And again, they're two completely different approaches when it comes to picture, even though they're using the same QD-OLED panels that come from Samsung Display. Samsung Electronics have gone for the Samsung Electronics look, which is to push everything, make it look nice and bright. Draw your eye to the picture when you're standing in store. It's going to be the brightest picture in there, the most colorful. You do get the advantage of color volume with QD-OLED, but what people need to remember is that color volume is different to color saturation, and Samsung push the saturation. And that's where you get issues, because you're then losing detail within color when you push the saturation, when you push the brightness too hard. So they've gone for the overly bright, in your face, doesn't this look amazing look, which is great for 5 or 10 minutes. But if you value good picture quality, where you want to see all the detail and so on, getting the Samsung to look accurate is a little bit more difficult, because even out of the box in filmmaker mode, it's too red. It pushes red too much, which again, when you're coming from a WRGB OLED like an LG, which uses the white subpixel, I've seen lots of comments that red is just spectacular on the Samsung. Well, in a side-by-side for the initial few minutes, yes, that is the case, but it gets on your nerves very, very quickly. It's wrong. It shouldn't be pushing red as much. It's great to have the color volume there, but Samsung are not presenting that as I would like to see it. And anybody that's interested in image purity and actually seeing the content as it's supposed to be seen, and why wouldn't you want to watch content as it was mastered and intended to be seen? It's a little bit too much, even in game mode and so on. You're going to spend hours trying to dial it in on the Samsung and try and get it to not clip the highlight details and so on. So again, Sony take a completely different approach. They are a company with a huge studio. They are a company with a huge professional department that make the professional cameras, that make the professional grading monitors. This is a company that's steeped in content creation as well as the products. And that's the approach that they take. And if you ask me what is the best looking image on a TV in 2022, it is the Sony. It is an amazing image. Now, I can hear a lot of people already saying, well, the Samsung's brighter and so on. And this is what we keep saying in the reviews, and I'm trying to push the point home. It's not all about the brightness. Brightness is important, peak brightness is important, but it's not the be all and end all. The main way is how the TV handles that and how it displays the image and how it tone maps the image. Now, a lot of people have said online, well, the Samsung can reach 1000 nits, so it's not tone mapping. No, the Samsung is tone mapping. They have dynamic tone mapping built into the TVs that you cannot switch off, and it is constantly working. It's always there. Sony's a completely different approach, and this is where you can see the differences in image quality, and this is where I think the purists are definitely going to go the way of the Sony. Those people who want to see the image as intended, they're going to go with Sony because they are doing it. I was going to say they're doing it the right way. They're doing it the right way to the standards, to the industry standards. You might have your personal preference and think, well, Sony looks odd and it's washed out, and look at this Samsung because it's so much brighter and all the rest of it. At the end of the day, our approach has always been watch the content as it was created and intended to be seen. Because if you don't do that, you're adding color that doesn't exist. You're adding extra sharpening, which Samsung does a lot of extra sharpening. Again, it cannot be defeated. Again, to make an image that instantly stands out, but where you're actually losing detail. And this is where I think a lot of the talk online needs to focus on what it is that you're actually gaining from having QD-OLED. What is the main advantage to QD-OLED? And it's not the initial overly bright, overly garish image. And I can see why people were drawn to that, and I can see why that was instantly appealing to people. But when it comes to image quality, Jules, and we're going to move on to this now, accuracy is important. It's not about 30-year-old standards and my TV is going to look crap if I set. It's about actually watching the content as it was supposed to be seen. And that doesn't mean in a dim room. You can watch in a bright room. You just adjust the image to suit the room conditions. And once you do that, you're actually seeing the content as it's supposed to be. Red is supposed to be at certain coordinates. It's supposed to look a certain way. The problem with the Samsung is it goes its own way. It creates its own thing. So that's as much as I'm going to say at the moment, because I don't want to go into measurements. I don't want to go into all the finer details that's going to be in the review. I'd rather you went and read the review. I'm definitely going to have lots of comparison pieces. I have all the major TVs here. I've got the G2, the C2. I've got the Samsung sitting next to me, the S95B. The Sony is sitting behind me on the stand there. The only issue we have is that that's a 55-inch Sony. It's all they had available. The other screens that we have purchased ourselves, they're all 65s. But that shouldn't make a major difference in terms of comparisons. We're going to do all the comparisons, and we're going to try and break it down in terms of how accurate the picture is, as well as how inaccurate some of the pictures are and the picture quality. At the end of the day, if you enjoy vivid, over-the-top images, nobody's saying that you're wrong and don't do that. If that's what you want to do, then fine. What kind of it doesn't annoy me, but what saddens me a little bit is the way that in the comment section, as soon as you mention accuracy, people jump on that as if it's a bad thing. It's not a bad thing. If you want to see the image as it's intended to be seen, if that's not your bag, that's fine, but don't try and talk down the way the image is intended to be, because that's there's whole industry bodies out there that say what an image should be. So if a manufacturer and their engineers think, well, we're going to push the colors and make it super bright, they can do that, because at the end of the day, they've got to sell a TV. It's the question, Jules, that comes up all the time. Well, I've got this AI processor, I've got this extra sharpening and this contrast enhancer and so on. Why are you telling me to switch it all off?
Well, I mean, as long as I mean, look, there are lots of modes in TVs, aren't there? Vivid, natural, dynamic, which do all that kind of stuff. As certainly as a professional calibrator, as a videophile that appreciates director's intent, I want at least one mode for SDR, HDR, HLG that doesn't do that stuff. And if they're doing that stuff to the most accurate mode, that's a concern.
Yeah.
So we shouldn't have to fight in order to get that kind of stuff switched off in Filmmaker.
Yeah, absolutely. So that's as much as I'm going to cover in this podcast. I know you'd like me to go into a lot more detail, some of you out there. If you've got questions, then get the questions in on the thread. I'll certainly look at them when it comes to the reviews. I've already seen that somebody's asked a question about 1302 firmware. I will be covering that. I'll be looking at that in a bit of detail. At the minute, I've got to try and get the Sony at a certain point in terms of testing before we get into all of that. But yeah, they're two different TVs. They're coming at the same thing from different angles. They offer the end user slightly different experiences. If you're a gamer, obviously the Samsung makes more sense with its 4 HDMI 2.1 inputs at 48 gigabits per second. The Sony only has 2, and one of those is the EARC. So if you're using EARC, you've only then got one HDMI 2.1 input, unless you use an AV receiver to do your video switching, which is that's a solution that you could use with the Sony. But again, it's coming at things at different angles, different designs, different smart platforms, that kind of thing. So they are different, and there is no such thing as a perfect TV, and it's something I'm going to say every week. But that is the case. Each TV offers the end user something slightly different, and it's about finding the one that suits you. I mean, QD-OLED is a great technology. Has it killed WRGB OLED? Absolutely not. Absolutely not. Because the G2, once you see the G2 calibrated, the differences are very, very subtle. And of course, the G2 is available in a 77-inch screen size. So that's something that the Sony and the Samsung can't match at the minute. So yeah, there are different TVs out there for different people. It's interesting. I'm loving it this year. There's so many nice little things to look at, and it's taken me a bit longer to do it, but there's lots of things to look at this year. So hopefully that's enough information for everybody. One of the things that we do talk about quite a bit in the reviews, and it's something we're going to wrap up on tonight, and it's great that Jules is here. And again, to explain, Jules is in the field, not only as a calibrator of consumer displays, but Jules also calibrates a lot of professional displays in studios and TV programs and all that kind of thing when they're shooting them and so on. All the monitors are calibrated by Jules to the industry standards and so on. So one of the things that keeps popping up in the reviews that people are maybe curious about, Jules, because it's a control that they should never touch if it's on their TV without a meter and software and the knowledge and how to use it. And that's a color management system. So explain to me, well, you don't have to explain to me, I know what a color, but explain to the listeners and viewers out there what a color management system is and what it aims to do.
Well, we've been talking in the last few weeks in the calibration slot about what we call the luma part of the signal, which is the black and white, the grayscale. It's getting your canvas correct, getting that white correct, and the gamma going through all those shades of gray. And ideally, we should have a display that is able there on the top of that to be able to present its colors accurately once you've fixed that. And on a grading monitor, that is very often the case. You get your white, you get your gamma, grayscale, bish, bash, bosh, all the colors are perfect. It's brilliant because the internal processing is fantastic, quality of the components, etc. That doesn't always happen on a consumer grade TV. So there's a need to adjust beyond that. And you have a color management system in most TVs nowadays. Historically, it used to be, color and tint. That's all you had. And you had the little funny color glasses to be able to look at, the color and the tint to set with your DVD disc, to set all that kind of stuff. That was really vague and it wasn't particularly accurate. And then thanks to sites like AV4 pressurizing manufacturers, we started getting color management systems in our televisions. They didn't always work. I remember the Pioneer Kuro didn't work. The CMS didn't work on that one. You couldn't really use it without injecting artifacts into the image. The LG CMS has had some issues for a number of years. So, just because the CMS is in a TV doesn't necessarily it works properly, and you have to know what you're dealing with. And as you say, there's no value to sort of messing around with it unless you have the instruments to measure what's happening as you're adjusting usually the hue, the saturation, the luminance of any particular given color. It's not really something you can dial in just by eye. You need the meters, etc. So most TVs nowadays will have this 18-point CMS in there for each of the colors: red, green, blue, cyan, yellow, magenta. Hue, saturation, luminance controls, because color is volumetric, as you've been saying. You can look at these 2D graphs on the reviews and you get the impression that it's just in, out, and roundabout, the color and the tint. But in fact, there's a third option. We need our 3D displays back again, don't we? So we can actually see the luminance values coming out off the screen. So color is volumetric, and there's a limit to what you can do also with those hue, saturation, luminance, traditional 18-point controls. So there's a push nowadays for 3D LUTs, which are much more all-encompassing, basically can pretty much fix everything with a good 3D LUT. And LG TVs actually support that 3D LUT calibration within the display itself. And it's something that it features very much also in post-production studios. I'm doing an ASO monitor down at a VFX house in London on Monday. And that'll be a 3D LUT calibration there as well. So 3D LUTs is the killer color calibration feature that some TVs have now, and certainly things like Lumigens and things like that have them as well.
So just before, without getting too technical,
Yeah, maybe.
for the audience, but what is a LUT?
It's a lookup table. So basically, it's an input value and then some output values. So it allows you, when you calibrate with a 3D LUT, to measure a display volumetrically. And so you can take into account a lack of linearity. I can never say this right. I mean, Ed said it earlier properly. Linearity. Linearity. That's the one. Yeah. So basically, displays they're ideally linear, but they're really not. I mean, there's no perfect display. And we can, with the 3D LUT, we can measure points throughout the volume of the color, and we can correct for that in a way that you can't do with a manual CMS control. So 3D LUTs are very much the sort of the gold standard of color calibration nowadays, particularly in post-production studios where color accuracy is absolutely vital. So,
and of course, we've got manufacturers who are introducing that. Panasonic have used 3D LUTs for a long time in their TVs, their CMS systems. Like you say, LG actually takes it down to the TV level. You can actually wipe the lookup table and create a new one. Through the Kalman software. That's one approach that you can use. So it's a technical subject, but thank you, Jules. You have made it a lot easier, a lot simpler for our listeners and viewers this evening to follow. If you've got any further questions about that, then of course you can ask those. You can't answer them. You can ask those in the feedback forum underneath this podcast, and we will get around to answering them as soon as we can. So do leave those questions for us. So it's been a busy show tonight. Lots to get through. We're actually not too bad in terms of time. And is this another thing that you want us to look at? Is there too much in a podcast? Should we be looking at one or two subjects rather than trying to cram everything in? Or do you like the fact that we cram as much as we can into the podcasts? Again, leave us your feedback on what you think about the podcasts, again, in the podcast forum. And we really are interested in finding out what you guys think. Ed is going to round up tonight before we get into the TV shows with his album playlist and vinyl for this week.
Well, I'm saving time, you see, because album and vinyl are one and the same this week. This is a band called Sheafs. I'm not 100% sure. All I know is I like this a lot. The album is called A Happy Medium. It's on all major streaming services. You can buy it on CD now. I've selected it as vinyl because nothing else has blown my frock up like this one has. I'm hopeful that I've ordered it, so I'll have to stick it if it isn't any good. But I'm hopeful that it will turn out to sound pretty solid on analog as well. It's good, angry music to get worked up to. So I've thoroughly enjoyed this. As I say, it is on all the streaming services if you don't fancy buying it on a record. So that is covers both of those. Playlist. You'll have to bear with me on this one. This is a bit personal. Qobuz has an entire Italian disco playlist, 3 glorious hours of Italian disco. Now, you might be thinking, why do I want to listen to Italian disco? That's a perfectly good question. Just listen to it. Italian disco is joy encapsulated in musical form. There's stuff dating all the way back to the early 80s through to the present, because it has been going for that long. Some of it's dreadful, but that's the nature of Italian disco, but some of it isn't dreadful. And I defy you not to enjoy at least half of it. Which half of it is up to you. So that's on Qobuz. Again, you can port the link across if you need it. There's a piece of software called Soundiz, which will take the Qobuz playlist address and port the playlist over to the streaming service of your choice. So there you go. Those are my 2 things for this week. Then you muted, Phil.
I need to unmute, don't I? So there you go. Thank you very much for that, Ed. That is appreciated. Right, moving on quickly. Alistair Cox, thank you very much. $8.99 you have donated this evening. That really is appreciated. He says, a quick shout out to Jules, who carried out a calibration on my TV last week. First I've had done, and I am blown away. Highly recommended. And that's great feedback. Thank you very much, Alistair, for your donation tonight. That really is appreciated. And just very quickly going through some of the questions that we didn't get around to answering. I think I covered most of them in my roundup of the S95B, certainly looking at some of the questions here. I will get into the firmware in future podcasts and in the reviews and comparisons. So 1302 will be looked at. Also looking through very quickly a lot of these questions. So questions from the likes of Moby, his was answered. Christian, we got through your question as well. So thank you very much for the questions that have come in tonight. Like I say, if you've got any, if you're listening a little bit later in the week, get them in the podcast thread. And again, your feedback on the podcast, please. What do you think of the podcast? Is it the right format? Would you like us to see us tweak things and so on? Grumpy, very quick one. For people who haven't calibrated their TVs, is it advisable looking on the internet and copying other people's values, or is that a big no-no? At the end of the day, you can do whatever you like. When it comes to, if that's what you want to do and you want to copy other people's settings, that's fine. Nobody's saying don't do that. I think the results would not be great. I can tell you that the results won't be great. You've got panel variance and so on. You're also looking at somebody else's personal preference in most cases, which is not probably going to suit your taste, or it might look great initially for 5 minutes, like we say, and then you start to realize that you're actually losing detail and clipping brightness and all the rest of it. The best advice, and go hire Jules if you can. But if you can't hire Jules or a professional calibrator, the best advice we could probably give you is shove it in cinema mode or in filmmaker mode. Most TVs have filmmaker mode now. Sony are the only company that don't have filmmaker. They call it custom, so make sure it's in custom with Expert 1, I think it is, for white balance off the top of my head. And you're more or less there. Just go through the menus and just double check that a lot of the edge enhancement features that are in there, and of course motion is switched off. Although motion is changing, and we're going to get to that probably next week when we start talking about motion and what's the best way to set it up. But I think that's about it in terms of the questions and the donations, so thank you very much. What are we watching on the TV? So very quickly, I finished Stranger Things 4. Jules, you finished it as well?
I finished it as well. Blown away.
I watched it during my bout of COVID. Didn't realize how long the episodes were going to be. It was a lot to get through.
Feature film.
Yeah, feature film, especially the last episode. But my God, it was absolutely brilliant.
Brilliant.
So can highly recommend that. Even the girlfriend who hadn't seen Stranger Things 1 to 3, she sat and watched it and was glued to the TV as well. So yeah, really good stuff. I have started watching The Crown. I didn't think it would be a series I would get into and watch. I've got to say, in terms of production values, the money's on the screen there. Absolutely. So I'm getting through season 1 at the minute. Will I stick to it? I don't know. James May is also back on Prime TV. If you like James May, and I do like his presenting style, he is our man in Italy for this season. He was our man in Japan for season 1. So if you're interested in the travel log type format, that kind of thing, him saying cock a lot, then James May in Italy, that's what you need to watch.
I've been watching that. I'm just worried that he's slowly but surely morphing into an elderly prog musician in terms of his general appearance. But
yeah.
He's still watchable, and still I would contest the best of those three when taken away from things with engines, and I say that over and above Jeremy Clarkson. He is better at doing, it's not simply being Jeremy Clarkson doing a non-car thing. So I've enjoyed that. I've also, as I say, I keep trying to watch that thing with Ryan Gosling in, and I've just started watching Brooklyn Nine-Nine again, because I maintain that the character of Captain Raymond Holt is one of the very finest comedic creations of the 21st century. There are very few characters that are
I've only ever watched the first episode of season 1. I think I need to give it a go, because everybody does say it's really good.
Brilliant.
So.
It's amazing.
So,
okay.
Yes.
Excellent. Jules, anything else that you're watching other than Stranger Things?
I'm not sure I should confess to this. Not TV, but I'll confess to it anyway. I watched Back to the Future for the first time.
The first time?
The first time? The first time?
How could you not just accidentally watch it?
Great.
I don't know how I've ever avoided it. I have no idea.
Achievement. I mean, I thought I was doing quite well by having never seen Jaws or The Shawshank Redemption. But I mean, they are very much adult themed, So
my wife's never seen Star Wars either.
Hey, that's more common than people give
Well,
credit for.
I think the important thing here is, Jules, did you like it?
I've seen it. I've seen it, and it grew on me. It got better. It's very 80s, obviously, and that's part of the charm, I suppose.
Yeah.
And 80s being in Stranger Things and all that kind of stuff. Yeah. Then I really did enjoy it. Yeah. Is there a sequel?
Apparently.
Yeah, there's two more. They're actually on 4K Blu-ray, and they're quite cheap at the minute, so go get them. Ian, what have you been watching?
I've been picking up some kind of easygoing 7 out of 10 action fodder. The Terminalist on Prime was quite good without being sort of too spectacular, but I enjoyed it. Also, season 3 of Titans on Netflix. Again, pretty decent without being too spectacular. You kind of get into the routine of it a little bit. The other thing I watched that was quite interesting on Netflix was the DB Cooper documentary series.
Now, you see, I saw that and it looks quite interesting. Is it?
Yeah, it is. It's good because I knew of the legend, but I didn't really know the story. So it kind of explains the story quite well, but it doesn't really tell you anything new because it's still, well, without giving too much away, it doesn't tell you a lot more than you really kind of hope for when you go into it. But if you want to know the background story and learn more about this saga, which you've seen in no end of other TV shows and films that will always reference it, and you wonder who the hell is this DB Cooper guy, it's worth a watch just to find out.
Cool.
Excellent. Right. Well, I think we're all caught up. Once again, thank you for all your comments. I can see some of the feedback coming through as well. So thank you very much for that. If you are watching live at the minute, that is appreciated. And like I say, anybody else out there that wants to give us some feedback, you can do that on the podcast thread. Future podcasts coming up. So August, again, we have 2 podcasts coming up, 8th of August and the 22nd of August. So tune in for those. They are live on the Monday evenings. So it's the second Monday and the fourth Monday of every month. Apart from December, we change it around in December for obvious reasons, but most months it's the second and fourth Monday. So we hope to see you again for live podcasts. So my thanks to Ian, Jules and Ed. And coming up next is the Movies Podcast. And of course, if you enjoyed this podcast, then please give us a like and subscribe to the channel. Plus, you can hit the notification bell and be informed every time we publish new live streams, product reviews and so on. And there's lots of product videos coming up. They're all in the pipeline at the minute. So you are going to be inundated with TV stuff coming up very soon. You can also follow us on Twitter and Facebook, bookmarkavforums.com for latest reviews, news and videos. And of course, leave us a 5-star rating on whichever podcast service you use to listen or watch us. It really is appreciated. I'm Phil Hinton. Thank you very much for watching and listening. And please join Tom and the Movies guys at 8:30. Good night.